So the DNC, particularly Chairman Tom Perez, they've had a really difficult couple of months, to say the least. You know, the year started off with him being elected to this new position that he probably didn't want, but was pushed into by the party's elites as DNC chair. They've had terrible fundraising months, and then he got a lot of pushback when he decided to purge progressives from the DNC. And then it was revealed that Hillary Clinton bought the nomination. She took over the DNC in 2015, long before she became her party's nominee. So the DNC, I mean, this is a PR nightmare that is irreparable. You can't fix this image that has been just decimated because the DNC's corruption, it's systemic. It's so far-reaching that there's no way to really ever earn back that trust that they lost unless they replace everyone. I mean, just cleanse the DNC from top to bottom of all these corrupt individuals that continue to drive the party off the cliff. But in spite of all that bad news, it just got a little bit worse again for the DNC because they reported that in October, they had their worst October fundraising month since 2003. So Eric Brandner of CNN reports the Democratic National Committee's fundraising woes continued last month when the party posted its lowest total for the month of October in at least 15 years. The DNC raised $3.9 million in October, far short of $9.2 million raised during the month by the Republican National Committee. The RNC has now raised $113.2 million over the 2017 calendar year and has $42.5 million in the bank and no debt. The DNC, meanwhile, has raised $55 million this year. It has $5 million cash on hand and owes $3.2 million in debts. It was the worst October for Democrats dating back to 2003, the year the national parties were required to file monthly finance reports. The low totals reflect the difficulty the DNC has had raising money since former President Barack Obama left office. And it's not just because Barack Obama left office. The reason why the DNC is having trouble raising money is because they have no legitimacy. What little trust they had, they betrayed in 2015 and 2016 when they decided to rig the primaries against Bernie Sanders. So how do you expect to raise money from progressives if nobody trusts you? I mean, there's no way to really cultivate that trust back. Now, the article suggests here that part of the reason why their fundraising is lower than usual is because they've formed JFAs, joint fundraising agreements with states, so the money is going more, towards state parties. But I mean, for a national party organization, this is still horrific. It's a PR nightmare, and it doesn't bode well for their prospects in 2018. But thankfully, what we're really seeing is a shift to people donating not to the DNC, but instead to candidates that they like, or to organizations like Justice Democrats and Our Revolution that support candidates that we like. So that is important. That's really important because we're taking power away from the DNC, and we're saying we have the power. We're putting that money in candidates that we like, and we're not allowing the DNC to control who gets money and who doesn't. Because when you allow the DNC to make decisions on behalf of the party, well, when progressives like James Thompson runs, what do? They just ignore that race. I mean, look at Lee Carter. They ignored him, a Democratic Socialist. They ignore progressive campaigns. They don't come out to support progressives. But when it comes to milquetoast neoliberal Democrats, people like John Ossoff, that's who they support. But they don't ever support progressives. And if they do, their support is tepid at best. So here's the thing. The DNC, I really don't see how their fundraising can improve. But I mean, as the DNC chairman, your number one job is fundraising. You've got to raise money for the party. And Tom Perez is not doing that. So the question now becomes, well, when are you going to step down? We already saw inklings of pressure from DNC insiders and Democratic Party members basically saying, look, you're not doing a very good job. You've got to step down. And we want him to step down. We want the party to put pressure on Tom Perez to resign, which they haven't really done yet collectively. But we want that to happen because then his deputy DNC chairman, Keith Ellison, will presumably take over to be the new DNC chair. Now, make no mistake about it. Is Keith Ellison perfect? Absolutely not. There are so many flaws about him, but Keith Ellison is exponentially better than Tom Perez. He is worlds better than Tom Perez, and he actually genuinely is trying to do good. Now, I think that he lacks a spine in a lot of ways, and he doesn't speak out enough. And he stood behind Tom Perez in spite of all the controversies and the progressive purge. But look, he's still better than Tom Perez. And that's important because if we have someone that's even a little bit better, like Keith Ellison, well, in 2020, we have more assurance that the DNC won't do what they did in 2016 and rig the primary against Bernie Sanders. So look, this DNC fundraising, issue, the fundraising woes, as the article puts it, that they're experiencing, this is a self-inflicted wound. You can't expect to raise money from people after you defrauded them. I mean, people donated money to the DNC, and that's because you said that you were running a fair, impartial, neutral primary, but it turns out you took their money and lied to them. So how are you going to expect people to trust you when you defrauded them? You can't. That's why they're losing. Progressives are very generous. You saw that the average contribution to Bernie Sanders' campaign was $27. So the DNC, they don't know what they did in screwing over progressives. They basically shut themselves out of access to a progressive piggy bank that would have been willing to donate to this organization in order to defeat Republicans. But, they decided that they wanted to be corrupt and defraud progressives instead. And now look, you reap what you sow. This is what the DNC deserves. They deserve all these fundraising woes because they're a corrupt organization. That corruption is systemic and rampant. So I'm loving all of this.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.